Hey guys, Will here. So today's video is one that I'm personally really excited about, and hopefully it's some exciting news for you guys as well. Now you might have noticed, if you've got a keen eye, that we've been adding some flight sim content to our website over the last couple of months. And if you haven't noticed, we've been adding some flight sim content to our website over the last few months. Now, flight sim is something that I've always been interested in, but never really had the capacity to completely absorb myself within. As you can imagine, keeping myself across all the sim racing stuff that's going on is enough work as it is. So something that I've always wanted to add to Boosted Media, but something that I've just never really had the capacity to do so. But let me introduce now Sean. All right, guys, so this is Sean. Sean, internet. Sean, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Will. Hi, internet. Well, I am Sean. I am 40, or about to be.
Yeah, me too.
I think you're a little closer than I am.
Oh, don't tell him that.
Well, I've been around aviation, flight sim, VR for about as long as I can remember.
Nice, nice. And what sort of involvement have you had in aviation?
Yeah, so aviation's in my family. Both
Yep.
my grandparents or my grandfathers on both sides were in aviation.
Yep.
So I didn't have to look very far for inspiration. Mum and Dad did a silly thing. They moved close to a regional airport.
Oh dear.
So I, one day, as a 14-year-old, asked Mum and Dad to take me down to the airport. Let's see
Yep.
what all this is about, and sort of haven't looked back since.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So you are a qualified pilot now as well?
Sure am.
Yep. So what kind of training have you done? What does that involve? What can you fly? Tell us a little bit more about that experience.
So did start training at my flying school or saving up for training for my flying school by washing aeroplanes
Yep.
at my local flying school. That was a lot of fun. And I've been on a lot of aeroplanes if you classify washing them as being in them. But was lucky enough actually to win a scholarship through that first initial part of my training, which got me to a point, and then sort of continued on a little bit from that. Ended up with my private license on a couple of aircraft.
Yep.
So Cessnas, Cessna 150, 152, 172, and then sort of switched to see what the Pipers were all about, and the Piper Warrior, the Archer, and things of that nature. So that's where I learnt I learned about the love for high wing aeroplanes versus low wing aeroplanes. Being able to do any photography, you definitely want to wing above your head rather than under.
Are they completely different to fly as well?
They have their own characteristics. I think if you can land a Cessna, you're doing a pretty good job. Pipers
I can't.
They've got their own characteristics.
Yeah. Okay. So when you decided that you wanted to be a pilot, and you kind of, that passion was ignited, what was the ultimate goal there? Did you have aspirations to be like a commercial pilot, or what did you actually want to do?
Absolutely did. But there's sort of two loves in my life: the love of aviation and becoming a pilot, and ultimately ending up as a commercial pilot working for an airline. But also my love for technology, tinkering, and just technology in general. So was lucky enough to join one of Australia's biggest airlines, and sort of worked my way through different technology roles, and sort of ended up there at sort of senior technology roles towards the end there, before I sort of moved out of aviation temporarily into the not-for-profit sector. Okay,
so very similar kind of background to me, with having a passion for motor racing and cars in general from a very young age, and technology, and ultimately bringing everything together with sim racing, as we've done with the channel. I mean, this channel has flip-flopped between being a project car channel early on, then we did a lot of technology stuff, and then we kind of found our niche within sim racing. So obviously you've got a lot of real-world piloting experience. How does flight sim fit into that picture?
Yeah, so flight sim played a really critical role early on for me to reinforce what I was learning. And that capability has only grown. Finding myself in technology roles, bringing those two worlds together really was a great thing for flight sim for me. Yeah,
and I think it's one of the things that I've noticed watching some of your streams, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But
you found those?
I did. So it seems like there's this really sort of diverse community around flight sim. And like one of the things that really surprised me, because I'd never really been exposed to anything like it before, watching one of your streams once, was that you were talking to air traffic control, and that was a real person. And obviously that person knew what the hell they were doing. Like, it wasn't like it was just some kid talking.
Sometimes it is.
But I mean, like, how does all that work? Because obviously, like, there seems to be this community of really knowledgeable, probably qualified people, and they're all kind of helping each other out, and they're obviously very passionate about what they're doing. So how does that whole community kind of work?
Yeah, so there's a couple of big networks,
Yep.
and we connect to those to either fly an aeroplane or we can control as well.
Yep.
And like you say, there is all walks of life there. You've
Yeah.
got young kids that are just exploring it for the first time. Perhaps they found the flight simulator on Xbox, which it's now available on,
Yep.
and then have sort of taken that next step
Yeah.
to seasoned air
Yeah.
traffic controllers that have done this for a lifetime. And
Right.
pilots as well of all
Yeah.
flavours. You've got the private guys like myself, but you've also got people that have been doing it for years, and they're just practicing and honing their skills as well.
Okay, so yeah, it's very similar to sim racing. One of the blessings and the curses of sim racing is that you've got, because it's so accessible, you've got lots of different people that are all doing it for different reasons. So like you were saying with, professional pilots training, we have professional race drivers that are using, iRacing and whatnot for, professional training, track familiarity, whatnot. And then you jump in, you might have guys that just want to have a casual race of an evening, and you put all those guys together in one lobby, and often it can be absolutely amazing, or it can be absolutely disastrous. There's not much in between. So what you were saying there about the titles becoming a little bit more accessible and like now being available on Xbox, for example. Have you seen that there's been quite a transition across from, flight sim being something that's sort of more just reserved for the really hardcore, passionate, professionals and enthusiasts to being kind of more mainstream? And what kind of impact has that had on the space overall, do you think?
Yeah, so I think it's actually played a really big role in opening it up to a far wider audience.
Yep.
And yeah, you may not get the same experience on an Xbox, but it's a gateway to being able to then go and beg mum and dad for spending maybe perhaps a little bit more money, getting it onto a computer, getting some controls, and then where does that take you? And I've seen many people on that journey turn into professional pilots.
That's awesome,
by starting out that way.
Yeah.
And it's a similar way that I did. It was a fantastic tool to be able to do that. And I think anything that gets more young people into aviation is absolutely the right way to go about it. And when you put it on a console, there's sometimes a little bit of noise made around that. Or is it a video game, or is it a simulator? And I think anything, regardless of what you want to call anything that gets more young people into aviation. I had a wonderful career in aviation that wasn't necessarily a pilot.
Yeah.
So there are many doors that it can open for you.
Yeah, and having the ability to have something that's accessible, because let's face it, the majority of us are never going to get to fly a plane.
Sure.
But being able to do that kind of keeps that passion going for whatever else you might be doing within the sector.
Absolutely.
So you sort of can maintain the hobby that way as well. And one of the things we've seen in sim racing, in more recent years is a lot of guys that were just sim racers in their basement have now gone on to be professional racing drivers. I mean, like Jimmy Broadbent, for example.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's probably the most well-known example. He just raced in the Nürburgring 24-hour race just recently, and it was amazing. I think they ended up finishing second or something. So, there's obviously a lot of real life skill that is developed through these simulators, and it's cool to hear that it's, similar in flight sim as well.
Absolutely.
So, going back to the planes and stuff, you were saying earlier how you've, got experience in real life flying, your Cessnas, your Pipers and whatnot. The streams that I've watched you doing, I've seen you flying all kinds of different things. Sure. Mostly the ones that I'm interested in are the big passenger jets, because they're big and they're cool and they're loud, and like that's something that there's a massive amount of responsibility driving one of those things or flying one of those things, piloting one of those things. So how do you go from a small aircraft, which is more sort of like hydraulic and manual control, to something that's, primarily and predominantly computer driven? Yeah. How do you learn? Because I downloaded X-Plane a couple of years ago to play around with. And, I thought, oh yeah, we've got this computer thing in here, and, obviously you need to put in destinations and waypoints and whatnot, and, you've got controlled descents and, all that stuff. And I kind of thought, oh yeah, I can learn that, no problem. And then, a 17-hour video later, I still had no idea what the hell I was doing. And, it's pretty darn specialized and complex stuff. And like, it's not, like, I think people probably think of it, a lot of it as being very modern and like, just like an iPad in your plane, but it's pretty, pretty bare bones and pretty raw, the kind of stuff you're having to do. So how did you learn to do all that kind of stuff? Because like when I watch one of your streams, I would think that you were a professional pilot that's flying passengers around the world and stuff. So
just
how did that all?
Ones.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you keep it in the air, so
yeah.
So how does all that work?
Yeah, so like most humans, as soon as you get to that checkpoint, you're going, well, what's next, right? What's the next thing? So I knew sort of through my early 20s that technology pool was probably greater than the pool of aviation. So for me, I was sort of limited by how far I could go in the aircraft that I could fly.
Yep.
So for me, that involved, well, where do I get my outlet?
Yep.
And that was flight sims. So
Yep.
like many,
Yep.
relying on content creators that have created videos and real pilots that are showcasing their trade and how they fly these complex aeroplanes. Working for one of Australia's biggest airlines also afforded me a wonderful opportunity to work with many professionals and professional pilots at the height of their chosen careers. So being able to work with them, being able to talk with them, being able to sort of bend their ear and get them to answer questions about how it's done would then allow me to translate that into some of those streams and some of those videos that you're referring to.
Yeah, that's really awesome. So I think, as young guys sort of, in that space, passionate about technology and motor racing and flying and whatnot, being able to have the opportunity to be in that environment and just be like a sponge, just absorbing as much information as possible is really powerful. And I think we're both very lucky that we've had those kinds of opportunities growing up. So we've talked a lot about, flying sort of commercially and doing, passenger jets, things like that. Now, one of the things that I've noticed that's really cool about flight sim is the diverse range of different types of flight sims there are. So you've got everything from, plane to plane combat to, passenger jets. What's your experience with that kind of stuff, and what do you personally like? If you've got half an hour after work to jump in the sim, what are you flying?
Yeah, well, it depends on what sort of mood I'm in.
Yep.
Is the first starter. So if I'm looking for a bit of pain and getting shot down, I'll jump into something like DCS and fly a Hornet and be flying around trying to shoot other people down. That doesn't really happen. Or the flip side, like we've spoken about, flying something a little bit slower and a little bit not quite as fast paced, but definitely do enjoy the mix of both worlds. There's a lot of fun to be had in DCS. And it's got a wide variety of aircraft. You can fly helicopters, you can do all sorts of things. And there's a really great community for that as well.
Awesome. Yeah, one of the things that I find often, if I've been trying to record a race video for days and days and days and I just keep getting wiped out in turn one, one of my favorite things to do is just jump in Assetto Corsa in like an open world kind of map and just go for a drive. Because it's been raining a lot here recently. I can't really take the real life car out and the roads are all torn up and whatnot. But just being able to get in there and just clear your mind and drive is awesome. So it sounds like it's quite similar in that sense. And I think with flight sim as well, like because you've got long periods where you're kind of not necessarily needing to engage with the controls very much. You can, watch a movie or read a book or do something else while you're still kind of immersed in that world, which is pretty cool.
Absolutely.
So obviously there's a lot of different types of things that you can do from, passenger jets to combat jets, even helicopters you were saying. So obviously all those different types of aircraft have different types of control surfaces. Now with sim racing, we're pretty lucky that, it usually doesn't go much further than just needing to swap out a steering wheel or maybe set up your pedals a little bit differently. And one of the things that we've noticed recently is a lot of brands coming up with creative ways to allow you to adapt between different styles of driving so you don't have to spend more money for more and more gear. Now, obviously, in flight sim, it's a lot more complex than that because the way you interface completely is just fundamentally completely different. Some have a center, stick, some have a yoke, some have side sticks. I'm probably sounding like an idiot here, but obviously it's very different to driving. One of the things that struck me watching some of your streams was that you often will be flying in VR and using the hand controllers to actually operate the control surfaces. So how does that kind of work? Do you see equipment as being a big barrier to entry with flight sim? Or is it very much the case that anybody with an Xbox, like you were saying before, can just pick up a controller and have enough control to get the job done? I remember when I was playing X-Plane, I was actually using a PS2 controller and it was okay to maneuver and bring the plane down somehow, but obviously I'm not able to manipulate the controls properly and whatnot. So where would you sort of see, I guess, that journey? Would you say that, you absolutely need to have certain gear to be able to achieve certain things, or, how difficult is it to actually fly in VR like that?
Yeah, sure. So great question. So I think it's not too dissimilar to sim racing. There are quite a variety of different controllers at different price points, and I think one of the things that's really starting to explode is now bringing controllers to Xbox and joysticks to Xbox to really bring that next level of immersion. And I guess that's effectively what we're chasing in probably both worlds, right? Is, well, where's that level of immersion?
Where's the sweet spot
for you? And what can you afford and what's practical and things of that nature. So very much so. And I think unlike very similar to sim racing, is that depending on how much you want to spend, there's gear available, right, for that. So, but with VR, it's one of the things that I loved is how immersive it was. And X-Plane do VR particularly well, and there's a particular version of the 737 that's been modded that I think really showcases how immersive VR can be.
Yeah.
And to your point, yeah, absolutely. The only thing I really had physical was my rudder pedals.
Yeah.
It was pretty hard to strap controllers to my feet. But yeah, using my controllers to grab the yoke, to move the throttles, to move all the switches, to punch down into the FMC and things of that nature. And you're actually grabbing nothing but air.
Yeah.
But when you're immersed in VR flying, your brain doesn't register that it should.
You're not getting that tactile feedback, but it doesn't really matter.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Your brain just forgets that. And there's been many, many times where I've been landing and talking on stream and things of that nature and totally
just absorbed
in the experience. And that was really where I found the sweet spot.
Yeah.
And I do something similar, very similar in DCS as well for combat sims.
So that's probably a good segue into talking to you guys a little bit more about what our intentions are with this expansion into flight sim stuff. Now, we were just talking about how you don't necessarily need to have super high-end gear to enjoy the experience of flight sim, and how in some cases you might even get more, I guess, versatility out of a more basic setup than having something that's super high-end and super specialized. So one of the challenges that we faced when we first started doing sim racing reviews was that at the start you only have a couple of brands that are sending you stuff, and it's very difficult to have a broad spectrum view of all the different types of hardware that's out there. So we've already been spending quite a bit of time. Sean already has quite a bit of experience with a variety of different types of hardware, and we'll obviously be expanding that over time. We've been building up, as I said in the intro, quite a body of content before releasing this video, just so that you guys have got something to see there, and so that you can build up your experience with different hardware over time as well. So that's something that we're going to be expanding on. But as we were discussing, I guess what we're really trying to achieve here, would you agree, is sort of opening up the world of flight sim to the community, making it clearer that you don't need to have super high-end gear to enjoy it, but also sort of trying to cover that more entry to mid-level range. That's really sort of an expanding market at the moment.
Absolutely, and that's where a lot of the choice lies.
Yeah.
Is in that sort of early to mid-range market. So covering off that well and what works is, I think, really important. Yeah,
because I mean, like for me, looking at the hardware at the moment, like I as I'm sure a lot of people feel with sim racing, like you just don't know where to start. Like and more expensive isn't necessarily better either. It's just a little bit more specialized.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's a basic understanding of what we're planning on achieving here. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like yet. We're just going to basically dive in and see what happens. Take you guys along for the journey as well. And let us know in the comments down below, what kind of things you would like to see more of, less of, what you think we're nailing, what you think we're not. We really very much want to take you guys along on this journey with us, and shape it to be what you guys want to see. Now, one other thing quickly before we close up. I did do a little bit of digging, and I noticed that you have an iRacing account. So what's the story there?
It's nothing to write home about.
Okay.
I was a good 3 or 4 seconds off the pace, so it's
probably am as well, to be honest. But
I've seen you drive. You drive a lot better than I do. But yes, absolutely.
Yep.
Every now and again, I'll get the G920 and chuck it on the desk and see what I can do.
Awesome.
But am fond of the old racing or the old driving.
We were having a little bit of a chat about Formula One before, and our favourite driver may vary, but
that was almost
a deal breaker, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
We won't say who goes for who, but it might get revealed a little bit later on. But guys, we're really excited about what we're going to be doing here. Very excited to have Sean on board as well. It's very rare to come across people that are as like-minded as I think we are. I think we align on a lot of things, even just chatting before about some of the things we've done in the technology space with overclocking and deleting CPUs and all that kind of stuff. We're just geeks.
Tinkerers.
That enjoy this. Tinkerers, Yeah, so really excited to see where this goes. Thanks for watching, guys. And we'll see you very soon. Bye.